We're back! Woohoo! After an hour and 17 minutes last episode.
Yep.
We're ready.
We are so ready to be back.
Come on.
Here at the Crosspoints podcast.
Yes. With David and Orah.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
So excited to be here.
Come on.
If you missed last week's,
Probably rewind and go back.
Go back and do that one first. It is a prerequisite.
Yes, because these we're kind of putting in order.
Yes.
Yes.
Last week we talked about our own church controversy.
Right, and the consequences as a result of that.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yep.
Yes, and today we want to talk about in general.
Yes, in the broader spectrum of Christianity in 2024.
Yes, some big church controversies.
Right, and then how that impacts believers.
Yes.
And preachers.
Yes.
And all of that.
And I'm really
because there's a lot going on in 2024.
Yeah.
About all of this stuff.
A ton.
It's so applicable. What happened back in the past with us, it really is applicable to where we are today.
They say history repeats itself, David. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that before.
No, tell me.
They say that.
Who said that?
They.
They, exactly. Love it. I'm sure someone said it. We need to fact check that. Jennifer's going to fact check that for us. Yes. We have our fact checker in the room.
Oh, boy.
Who said history repeats itself?
And the answer is...
Yes, we'll give her a moment.
Yes.
Okay, anyway, so let's do this.
Yeah, so I want to say that this summer, maybe? I can't remember exactly when. My husband and I, Phil is my husband's name, we watched The Secrets of Hillsong on Hulu is where we watched it, but I think it was on FX.
Okay, got it.
Did you watch it?
I did not watch it.
Have you heard of it?
Not because I didn't want to. It just wasn't readily available to me.
I see.
Does that make sense?
Yes. You're
I could have
cheap for a Hulu subscription is what you're saying.
Yeah, I was too cheap for that, and I didn't have a password from somebody else because, you know. But no. I probably would have. It just, I never got that.
You never watched it.
Should I watch it?
I loved it.
Oh,
I loved it.
Okay.
This is a thing, okay? If you guys haven't been watching this, true crime is like so big, it's a thing. But also, there's a lot of church documentaries that are coming out in the whole like true crime genre vibe.
I did not know that.
And there's a Hillsong one.
Okay.
And that's a really big one.
Okay.
And then I've heard that they're working on some other ones. Jen, can you fact check that?
Yeah. Okay, there may be some other ones, okay.
But there were two Hillsong ones that came out at the same time, one on HBO and one on FX.
I've heard about it. I don't know why I never watched them, but I haven't. I'm gonna have to look into it.
We really, really enjoyed it.
Okay.
So Hillsong.
Okay.
I think most of us are familiar with the music.
I, as a young 20-something, loved Hillsong.
Were you all in on Hillsong?
Oh, all in.
Can you name your favorite Hillsong song?
Well, I want to say this first of all. There was like the Darlene Check. How do we say her name? I don't know what her name is.
Do you
but
remember
she
her?
was the OG Hillsong. Yes. She got it going. Shout to the Lord, all the earth. You know, remember that?
We're going to be playing that on Sunday. Come.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Yes. No, but like that was like the beginning of the introduction for me.
Yes.
And then there was the next band, and I can't remember. What was the next band after?
I feel like Hillsong United was huge.
That's the one.
Okay.
Hillsong United was my jam.
Oh my God, they were so
I
good.
loved Hillsong United.
Do you remember at one point thinking like, wow, we are just as good as secular music?
Oh, well, I never listened to secular music, but so we were just good. It was
that was him
so
saying
good.
he's better than me, you guys.
Yes, spiritually. I'm totally kidding. No. So, man, we had a college ministry, and we wanted to jam to that music.
So good.
Oh, we tried to play it. It was so good.
Oh my goodness! When I was pregnant, I listened to Oceans like on repeat. That was like my song. I just loved it.
That's a good one.
Oh, so good.
What other songs you got? Come on, give me
That's all
another.
I've got. I can't think of anything else. I'm blanking.
It's so crazy when you're here with the lights. It's hard to remember all those songs. But man, so many good stuff. I would go on my runs. You know, I'm a runner.
Yep.
I got my Hospital Hill jacket here.
Shout out.
Yes. Anyway, so on my runs, pop in the headphones, and I would do a full album or two of United Hillsong.
You did?
So fun.
That sounds like an awful run. On top of running already sounding awful. Can you imagine running to worship music?
So fun. So fun. Oh my gosh. A crazy story.
Okay.
This is a total aside. It just hit me. I was running with this guy who was going to our church. He was in kind of our young adult ministry.
Okay.
And we were running. Scott, I'm so sorry, man. I'm going to throw you under the bus today.
I can't wait.
I know.
Sorry, Scott.
Sorry, Scott. And we were listening to this song. I can't remember. It was a Hillsong United song. And we were running and we were coming back. And I was running so fast with him that he had to stop about a mile out and he threw up on the run.
No!
No,
Your pace
Scott,
was
I'm so
too
sorry.
fast.
I'm
my
so sorry.
goodness. What a
It was
flex
so
from
bad.
David
But
right
I
now.
put the two together, the Hillsong, the throw up, and the run all together.
It's a core memory. It's a core memory.
It is a core memory. Sorry, Scott. I love you, bro. Anyway.
So Hillsong.
Yes, Hillsong. Hillsong. Okay.
If you don't know anything past the music, which is a big moneymaker for them.
Oh, I can't imagine. Do we know how much they make?
I actually looked it up, but I didn't write it on my note cards. I know.
Fact check. I want to know. I want to know how much Hillsong was making in like 2003.
Oh,
2003.
How specific.
Yeah. Just like I would think that was
Peak?
like
You think that's peak Hillsong?
I don't know if that was peak
Okay.
Hillsong, but it was like United for sure.
Yeah.
That might have been their peak stuff.
I don't disagree.
But millions of
In
dollars.
2019, Hillsong was making an annual revenue of nearly $100 million.
$100 million in 2019.
Wow. Money makers.
It's worth, in 2021, $76 million.
76
It's only
million.
worth $76 million now.
Yeah.
So they
It's
hit
gone
their
down.
peak.
Maybe from these documentaries.
Man, I know how that feels.
You've hit your peak also?
I was never at 100 million, let me tell you that much. Or, I mean,
Wow.
our church was never at
Yeah.
100 million. Can you imagine that?
But your ability to sing a worship song was golden.
Still
David.
is, Orah. Come on. Come on.
Onward Christian soldiers.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, that was a callback. Did you guys catch that? Wow. She's so good. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
I am going to give some Cliff Notes of some of the controversy that occurred within Hillsong Church.
Okay, yes.
Okay,
So,
we gave some-
do we know when Hillsong was founded? I
It was
always
founded
like
in the
to-
80s.
It was
Yeah,
no
70s?
I
It was
bet.
the dad.
I
I
bet
think it
it
was the
might have
dad.
been. Well, we need another fact check
Dang
on this.
it.
Sorry, we should have gone.
I didn't write it down.
On and done some a little bit more research. She's gonna look at
Okay.
it. So I'm gonna.
It was founded by
you
Frank
think
Houston.
1983.
1983.
83. What did you
Did I
say?
say the 80s?
She might have said 80s.
I know.
I would have thought it was
Rewind, everybody.
70s.
Come on.
Anyways,
Okay.
1983.
1983. Frank Houston started the church.
The father.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
It was until quite recently, I'm going to say 2022, run by his son, Brian Houston.
Right. Yes, Brian. Yes.
They had a ton of church plants.
Oh.
If you don't know that,
I mean, all over the world.
Yes.
He was, what is it, a global
church.
No, his title was do you know this?
No, I don't.
His title was the global senior pastor of Hillsong, which I
Can
thought
we
was.
call him that?
I thought that was. I'm ready. Just call me Global Dave.
Brother and David. our
Brother Global David.
senior pastor.
Let's get all of it together. Apostle, global, pastor. Yes, let's
Yes.
go. No, but his title was global, which I always thought was a little bit. It seems a little pretentious.
I don't disagree.
But I always want to be careful about talking about somebody.
I
because
know.
you got to be careful about
Guys,
that. We
he
love
has to be
people.
careful.
I do.
I don't.
You don't. But I want to. But I'm sure there was some reason why they came up with global senior pastor.
Accuracy.
Right.
Just for
Maybe.
accuracy's
But
sake.
it was a
Yes.
global church. I mean, legit.
For sure. They trained so many missionaries.
Right?
That was a big thing
Crazy.
for Hillsong.
How many missionaries? Do you have any idea how many missionaries?
Stop asking me
asking all
numbers,
these
David.
specific questions.
God. Goodness gracious, I'm going to do this for when he talks. I'm going to ask him specifics.
I know. But they had churches in London, in Germany, in the United States, obviously Australia, all
Yes.
throughout Europe, right? I mean, we're talking like hundreds of churches.
A lot of churches. I do have that they on their website. It says they currently have 150,000 members.
150,000
Yes.
members.
I know.
And that's what it is today.
Correct.
Before all the
Before the
controversy.
drama.
And the
Yes.
drama.
Yes,
I wonder what their
controversy.
peak was. Did you have that in your notes either?
You know what? Get this guy out of here.
I can't imagine the numbers of people.
Yes.
Like, wow.
Huge.
Yeah.
Well,
We talked about the pressure of Brother Ernie. Of Ernie
No,
Gruen. Can
with
you
4,000.
imagine and that's just 4,000.
The
Now you have
pressure.
hundreds of thousands of people that are looking to you.
Yes. And you also wonder what the supernatural will throw at you when you're that big also. You know what I mean? All the temptations, all the things that just have to be constantly like, we're going to get them eventually.
Can I tell you
know?
something?
Huh.
You don't even know this. Little secret here, folks. I ran into Brian Houston at the airport.
Did you?
I absolutely did.
That's the son who was running it.
Yeah, Brian. Sorry, are we still in the history, or do you want me to share the story?
Go ahead.
Okay,
You can
yeah.
share it.
So we were at a conference.
Okay.
And he sat right next to us.
Oh.
Oh yeah. Okay.
How tall is he?
He's he is super tall. I don't know.
Tall.
We can fact check, but he looked like 6'1" or 6'2" to me.
How many facts did you have?
I know, poor Jennifer. We're gonna have a scroll at the end of all the fact checks. He seemed like 6'1" or 6'2". He's a pretty imposing figure. And can I tell you something? When I saw him and his face, he had just spoken to probably 5,000 people.
Okay.
And he obviously was on a flight headed home, and he looked so depressed.
Oh.
My pastor's heart grieved for him. Mm-hmm. I was like, there is something seriously wrong going on. Mm-hmm. Like, I wanted to go over and just give him a big hug.
What year
I'm
was
not
this?
that bold. This was probably in 2000, and I'm going to say 2018 maybe.
Intrigue. Okay.
Yeah, so, right?
Yeah.
A lot of stuff maybe were happening under the surface that wasn't out yet.
Yeah.
But he just looked like a man that was oppressed.
Exhausted.
I'm not saying like demonic oppression.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like oppressed.
He was
like
dealing
just
with a lot.
Yeah, the emotion of it. I really felt sorry for him. I really did. I was just like, something's not
You
right.
and your compassionate heart.
Yeah.
That's why he's a pastor.
Thank you. Orah, one of these days. Okay, anyway, sorry. So I digress on the thing. But yeah, so I was able to have some kind of not interaction with him, but I did connect with him on that level.
Okay.
Okay, so here we are. So he's at the height. He's got 150, 200,000
people going there.
Okay, got it.
They have a lot of church plans. The documentary is called The Secrets of Hillsong, and it starts out focusing on Karl Lentz, who is a pastor of a Hillsong campus in New York.
Right, yeah. Karl was something of a celebrity kind of.
Huge.
Did he kind of start the celebrity pastor status? I wonder if he was one of the first.
I think he was.
I mean, like, kinda, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there were celebrity pastors before, but we wouldn't have called it that.
Just kidding.
Of course. But we wouldn't have called that.
No, he was huge, and indeed had many a celebrity going to the church, attending the church.
He was the hip pastor.
He looked cool. Like watching the documentary, I was like, I like his vibe. Yeah. Like he had a cool.
Wasn't he Justin Bieber's pastor? I don't even know that world.
Selena Gomez, Justin Bieber, a ton of like NBA people. They were getting baptized with him. I mean, he was
great
big.
stuff.
Great. God movement, as we talked about last week. God was in it.
Go back and watch that. It's a muddled mess sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. So all these people, all these famous people are getting saved, converted, baptized, loving Jesus.
Huge.
Is what you're saying.
The church is growing exponentially more than they are ready to handle.
Of course.
With volunteers, they don't have good systems in place.
I think if I remember, like he started, like his first Sunday as a church plant in New York City was thousands of people.
It's crazy.
I can't, again, another fact check, Jennifer might go, what did they start with in New York? But it was massive, if I remember.
And it grows so fast. There's lines out the door. People can't even come into these huge things. He's doing so many services a day.
Which goes back to, again, what are people drawn to?
I know.
I want to get to this in this podcast.
Yep.
People are drawn to celebrity in some sense.
And honestly, when you watch him in the thing, he has a vibe. He is
charismatic.
Yes.
Like not in the theological sense, but he's charismatic.
He's magnetic.
Magnetic is a better term.
There's just something that draws you where you're just like, I like this guy. This guy seems cool.
Like, what is it? It's like the it factor, right? Like there's something there.
Totally.
And I even had like boomers that would watch him on TV and love him.
Oh, really?
Because again, there was something magnetic about him.
He felt like us. Like as we're watching it, Phil and I are watching. He's like a layman. Like he doesn't feel like he's like a pastor or something. He felt regular, but had like the oration skills of Obama or something. You know what I mean? Like he just was like a really good orator.
Fun fact, I never listened to a sermon by Karl Lentz. Not that I was like, I'm never going to listen to a sermon by Karl. I just never did, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I have never listened. I should go back and listen.
He was
it really good?
Yeah, good. And emotional. He would cry a lot. He was an emoter.
Do you know our founding pastor, Ernie? Again, call back to last. He was a big crier in the pulpit too.
Really?
Very much so. Very much
that's really
so.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
How often I have seen you cry.
Some people said, like, is that a form of manipulation?
That is an issue that a lot of
And
people
again,
have.
I'm not pointing at either one of those guys because I don't know them
Yeah.
well enough to be able to say that, but I've heard that before.
People did say that in the documentary. That
Did
was
they
a
really?
question of
They
like,
did.
okay, was
Sincerity.
he an actor? Like, how can he do that?
Yeah.
You know.
You asked the question, have I cried in the pulpit?
Yeah.
A couple of times,
I was like,
for
I feel
sure.
like you have a few
I have a few
times, but not regularly.
Not regularly. I cry and I get emotional sometimes when I talk about like missions and people that like hear the gospel for the first time or have some kind of major encounter.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what we're called to do. Anyway, sidebar.
Sidebar.
But yes, the crying thing. Yeah, that sometimes can be kind of, you just got to be careful about that.
I know, you
right?
do.
But you also want to be vulnerable.
I know.
This is the thing, right? It's like we're
can't win.
charismatic, but we don't want to be so subjective
I
that we
know.
throw everything out the window, right?
Totally.
It's so hard.
It is really hard.
Like,
yes, it's a tightrope.
pastoring and leading a church is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
If
You're
I
never
may
gonna
say
please
so
everyone.
myself.
Yeah, really.
Yes,
Tell us all
okay.
about your problems, David.
But it is challenging. And
Yeah.
so I can't imagine these guys, like
Yes.
the pressure that they're facing.
Yeah.
Not that it excuses anything. So
Yes.
let's keep going.
Okay, so let's
so
go.
it's the church is blowing up.
The church is blowing up, and Karl Lentz was trained by Brian Houston. He was friends with Brian Houston's son. They're close. So I'm gonna say.
So would you say that Brian would be his mentor?
Yes.
Would you say that? Okay.
Yes.
100%. Okay.
So, at some point, seemingly out of the blue, there's a release that Karl Lentz has been let go for moral failures.
Right. Yes, I think I remember actually seeing the interview from Brian Houston about Karl Lentz, saying that
Yes.
we're removing him because of moral failure or
Yes.
moral whatever
Yeah.
issues. Yeah.
Which, again, go back to our episode last week.
Yeah.
Similar scenario here at
Yeah.
our church.
Yeah.
He cheated on his wife.
Okay.
And there was a big falling out. He was
Yeah.
taken down. I don't know much about that church in general, New York,
Yeah.
Hillsong, New York, but severely dwindled.
Oh well.
If
can you,
open at all.
Yeah. Can you? Yeah. That'd be another interesting fact check. Are they still around? I have
Yeah.
no idea. Because that's hard. We talked about this last podcast. Like, you know, you've built up so much of a trust, and that trust is shattered.
Yes.
It's really hard to come back
Yeah,
from.
So hard to come back
So
from.
hard to go. And, it's kind of like, it's a plant that grows really quickly and it dies quickly.
Yes.
Right?
So you think you're watching this documentary and you think this is a documentary about Karl Lentz. This is so crazy.
Well, this is what I would think. Now,
Yes.
hold it. So let's throw in the human element just for a second. Can you imagine being Karl Lentz's wife?
Who was also a pastor on staff.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Wow. How would you respond in that situation? Like, what would you do?
Yeah. It is what
Because
you guys,
I think it's easy for podcasts like this or people that don't talk about the human family side of things. There is a dynamic there. He's married.
He has kids.
He has kids. Like, these are real people. And it's easy to be like, we see a celebrity that's on TV and we don't think, we're just pointing fingers and why are they doing that?
Yeah.
And I don't want to just be a podcast that like just pointing the finger at people. I'm just like, can you imagine the heartache and the pain and the conversations that they had as husband and wife?
Yeah.
And she stuck with him? Has she stuck with him?
They're still together. Good character arc for him. He very
What?
repetitive. They're repetitive.
What did you say?
He repented.
Oh, repetitively repented. I'm pretty confident. I'm sure he said it more than once.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
he
Yeah.
repented.
No,
Still with his
wow,
wife,
so good.
Family still together.
I did not know this.
Yes.
Praise the Lord, like
Yeah.
legitimately.
Big character arc for him, and it does follow that the whole documentary. Seriously, so good. Okay.
Wow. So this is not just a hit piece on Hillsong.
No.
Because that's my first thought was Secrets of Hillsong. It's a hit piece. Let's talk about how bad Christians are. Hillsong is. It's all a scam. They want your money. It's just a business. I mean, I can keep going,
Yeah.
right?
And
that
I do
was
think
not.
it did have some of those elements.
Of course, okay.
Because that is part of the story of the church, it seems.
100%. You
Yes.
can't not talk about
Yeah.
it. But it wasn't just that. So
Right.
they really
we
do
got
get into
to
the
see
human
where
side of
he
things.
ends up and what he's doing now. Really
Wow.
interesting.
So is he in ministry? We talked about this. It's a callback from
not.
last time. Not in
No.
ministry. Does he want to go back into ministry?
It didn't appear so.
Really?
Yeah.
Advertising.
He's
in
in advertising. Yeah, PR, I thought. Or
okay.
something.
Well,
Yeah, something like that.
That
yeah.
it factor guy? Does that make sense?
Which, yeah,
Right?
really in his skill set, for sure.
Interesting.
So it goes from...
I wonder if he has a desire to get back up.
I don't know.
Was he a pastor that long? Do we know?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
Yeah.
he went to like the Hillsong school, I guess, you know, to become
but was
a pastor.
New York his first pastorate, so to speak?
It was.
It was.
Yeah.
So he was only a pastor for a few years
Correct.
before it all blew up.
Yeah.
So for me, okay, that's interesting. It's just not as long of an arc of being a pastor. Does that make
Yes,
sense?
yes.
It wasn't like he was a pastor for like 20 years
True.
and then it all happened.
True, but
it was like
was
one
his
season
ripple
of his
effect
life.
the same?
Oh, his
similar-
ripple
you know
effect
what I mean?
was way more
Huge.
massive. Oh,
Yes.
because of the platform that he had.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I
That's
keep
okay.
interrupting you, but yes, okay, keep going.
So you're watching, you think it's a whole documentary about Karl Lentz. Interesting.
course.
What possibly could 3 more episodes be about?
Oh, they had how many episodes were we talking about?
5 maybe or something.
Wow.
I don't know.
Okay, and you're just like, where are they going to go with this?
yeah,
They've
you're
already
like,
told
all
him
right, we
he's
got it.
repented. He's back with his wife.
Yeah.
It's all good.
What's
okay.
gonna happen?
And then
Well, then we focus on the head, the Hillsong head.
Okay.
And you find out that Frank Houston, who started the church,
Yes.
was sexually abusing boys,
Right.
minors,
Yeah.
and it was covered up by the church and his son Brian, who's currently running it at that
Yeah.
point. It's a big thing.
It's a huge thing
Huge
because they go
thing.
to court, don't they?
Yes. Brian Houston gets basically sued kind of by Australia where they are to say like you legally should have told.
Right. There's some
and
laws that they have that are a
divulged.
little bit different in the states about his accountability
Yes,
for
once
knowing
you knew that,
information.
you needed to come
Yeah.
forward
Okay.
because they were minors.
Wow.
And I'm going to say that happened in. He resigned in 2022.
2022,
And he was
yeah.
found not guilty in 2023.
I thought I had heard it was not guilty.
And I want to
Yeah.
say why he was found not guilty.
Okay.
The judge believed Brian Houston when
Okay.
Brian said he didn't think the victim wanted him to report it.
Yes, I remember
So
reading
it's
an
not that
article
he's
about
saying
this.
he didn't cover up. He
Yes.
did, but he's saying I thought he didn't want me to tell anybody.
He was adhering to the wishes, from what I understand,
Yes.
of the individual who he knew had been abused.
Yes.
And that guy, and I can understand that. Like,
So-
let me come from this perspective for a second. I can understand if you're a pastor and somebody is saying, listen, I don't want to be out in the media. I don't want that. Please don't say anything.
Yeah.
I can understand that.
So
But on the other side,
I know, minors
minors
can't speak for themselves.
can't speak for themselves.
Yes.
It's a
It
great
gets
point.
pretty
But was he a
intense.
minor when he said, I don't want this to be said? Does that make sense? I mean, he's an adult
Yeah.
now, right?
Yes, I don't.
Let me push
Brian
back.
says he learned about his dad's pedophilia in
Yeah.
1999.
While he was still a minor?
While Brian was still a minor?
No,
or
no,
while
no, no. Why the individual was a minor?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah,
I
see,
don't remember.
that would be an interesting line because I
Yeah.
would agree if he was a minor at that point, then that's a very different deal.
Yeah.
Like you don't get that choice. Like I'm going to go to your parent. We're going to make this.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Interesting.
Brian then so 1999 he finds out about
Sorry,
his dad
okay.
Frank.
Yep,
He
okay.
forces his dad to step down in 2002.
Okay, wow. So he sets the trajectory to say, Dad, you're out. We
Yes.
cannot have, this is not
Yes,
good. So
yeah.
he's taken some steps. So I'm going to just say kudos to him in that regard.
Yep.
Okay, keep going.
And there's a plethora of other Hillsong churches that have had controversies in this same time period. Not just Karl Lentz, not just the head of the church.
Oh, okay.
There was a Hillsong New Jersey. That head pastor in 2021 stepped down after sharing explicit photos, texting explicit photos to somebody. Wow. There was Hillsong Boston, and they resigned after accusations of racism in 2022.
Okay.
Head of the church, offshoots of the church, lots of church controversy.
Wow.
For Hillsong.
It's like the lid popped off. So crazy.
Yes. So as you're watching,
So now you have all of these hurt people. So from racism to abuse to, I mean, I don't know, was there theft as well in any of this?
Not
Did you
that I
know? Not
see.
that you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't know anything about that.
yeah.
But okay.
I mean, there is a lot of, they bring in a lot of money for sure.
Yeah, well, that's why I asked the question because I'm like,
Yeah.
$100 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is just a really good, huge, even cultural example that people will draw to of church controversy because it brought so many eyes to it.
Yeah, so many eyeballs.
So many
Okay.
eyes. And
Yep.
and like Karl Lentz, Brian was a good speaker. He didn't have the Karl magnetism.
Yeah.
He didn't have the same thing, but he was still able to create this system of churches.
Have
and for
you
churches to
listened
thrive.
to any of Brian's messages?
Yes.
Okay.
Not my style. He didn't attract me specifically.
Right. And I can see that. I'll tell you where his strength was because I agree with you. His strength was speaking to pastors.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Really, really talented at communicating structure, communicating how to deal with people,
Yeah.
circumstances, situations, spiritual help. just really good.
Yeah.
Like the conference that we were at, he was one of the best speakers there.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a good trainer.
What you did, what you didn't experience, I experienced from a different,
that's interesting.
wholly different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah, so that was...
Now, to be clear, some people would say he was a great communicator.
Yeah.
Even, right. I think maybe you just had a different vibe about it.
Yeah, I wasn't attracted to his preaching,
Yeah.
but I wasn't like, he's awful. How did he get such a big church?
Yeah,
I was just like, he
yeah.
didn't have the same
Yeah.
magnetism as like a celebrity preacher.
I gotcha. Yeah.
You know?
He would not be known as a celebrity preacher for sure.
Yes.
Even though he was a global pastor, not that kind of level. Okay.
Yes, and
Yep.
the documentary alluded that he was maybe a bit jealous of Karl's skill sets.
Oh, interesting.
you
But
know?
that's hearsay, probably.
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
everything's allegedly in this whole thing.
Let's be clear.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So that was a really good. And I also want to say, if you watch the documentary, it does talk a lot about the pedophilia and the like raping of boys.
Yeah. So maybe not safe for
Yes,
all eyes.
know
there.
that going
Okay.
into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Had you looked up any controversial?
Well, actually, maybe a couple controversial things. This is what we're talking about today. And then we're going to talk about like why we're talking about this.
Yeah.
So just so you know, we're not just like throwing stones at other churches, because we've already thrown stones at our own church. Or not thrown stones, but you know what I'm saying. We've uncovered our own path.
Shining the light.
Let's just say that. We're shining the light.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think about like New Life Church in Colorado Springs, which is
Ted
pastor
Haggard.
by the name of Ted Haggard, which most people probably have heard of. But I wonder if there's some younger generation
I think there's a lot of younger people
that don't even know who that
For
name
sure,
is.
yes.
So Ted Haggard was an immensely popular, charismatic. He had the it factor in
Okay.
the day, 100%. Very charismatic kind of pastor in Colorado Springs.
Yeah.
That had a church that just blew up in the sense of like attendance.
It had 14,000 congregants.
Which is insane in Colorado Springs.
Insane.
It was so crazy. So we would go out as a staff
Okay.
in the late 90s, early 2000s, and go out there to their conferences to New Life Church.
Intrigue.
Yeah, and they would
Okay.
have pastors from all over the country that would come, and we would, and again, talk about church and church staffing. They also were huge into missions.
Oh, okay.
I was the missions pastor.
Okay.
They had this thing called praying through the window, which there's the 1040 window, which
Okay.
people probably don't know. It's
Yeah.
the 10th latitude and then the 40th parallel. And in between this is like 90% of the world's unreached people. And you would pray for the the countries in the 1040 window.
Okay.
And they had a global prayer chapel that was dedicated to praying for people in the 1040 window to come to know
wow.
Christ. And their goal
I didn't know
was
that.
for everyone to come to Christ by the end of 2000. So here in the late 90s, early
Whoa.
2000s, that was kind of let's bring Jesus back.
Okay.
Let's preach the gospel to the ends of the earth. that kind of
Okay.
thing. So we would go out there all the time. So this Ted Haggard was leading this.
Yes.
And it was massively huge.
Yes.
Very charismatic. He became the head of the the National Association of Evangelicals as well.
Okay,
which
yeah.
was a national organization.
Yep. He served also as a director of church planning. Is that for them that he did that?
Yeah, I don't know much about that.
Okay.
That's new. I
Okay.
hadn't heard that.
I
What is it
looked him
called?
up
You
also.
looked him up.
Director of church planning for a huge section of organization. Of
I
church.
did not know that. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know he was into church planning that much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
I know.
Yeah. So, and of course, the allegation that came out was so shocking.
Shocking.
And it was like of the television kind of.
He was on Larry King.
Yeah, this
you remember
was,
that?
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Some of them don't know who Larry King is. He was
Yeah, true.
like the.
He
who
was
would
on
you
like
call
Anderson
him?
Cooper. Or
There you
like,
go. Yeah, like Anderson Cooper. That's great. That's great. Yeah, but this was kind of before the advent of internet as well. Like this happened in the late '90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think I was
in terms
college.
of when. In terms of when he blew up. Sorry,
I see.
I'm sorry.
like, no, like his fall was internet. Yeah.
No,
okay.
no. I'm sorry. I meant like when he was blowing up, like there wasn't the whole internet, so he wasn't
see.
necessarily the celebrity preacher that everybody got to know across the country
Gotcha.
because now everybody listens to everybody's podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
They watch the YouTube, but that kind of stuff wasn't happening. So to have a massive church in Colorado Springs of 14,000 people
Yes.
with not this system of being able to get the word out there to every evangelical was a big deal.
Yeah.
Like he had massive influence.
Massive appeal.
Massive appeal and influence.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then, of course, what is it? 2000? Do you have the date?
2006.
2006.
Yes.
Shocking news that literally, like, I was not part of the staff.
Okay.
I felt like we were really connected because I would go there multiple times a year for missions, for conferences. We love the work. They had a worship thing too, not as big as Hillsong.
Oh, I didn't know
Did
that.
you know that?
No, I
New
didn't.
Life Worship, some really great
Oh my gosh,
stuff.
I did listen to New Life Worship.
Yeah, New Life Worship was a big
Yes.
deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the revelations came out that he was having a homosexual affair.
With a prostitute.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, ouch.
And
it was so shocking.
yes.
Because here's a guy who was so affable, lovable. I talked with one of the guys on staff.
Okay.
I don't know. I didn't tell you
On
this.
his staff.
On his staff.
Oh, okay.
And he said I would go on trips with him. Mm-hmm. You know, to different conferences or whatever, and we would be traveling like wherever, and we would have Bible studies together. We would talk together. I was with him all the time. I had no idea that any of this was going on.
Double life.
Which
Double
is
life.
so, again, a call back to what we said last time, where people are like, well, surely they knew. Surely they knew.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I'm going to say, no, I don't think so.
That's interesting. Also, he was also found doing meth,
Get right.
which was another wild thing.
How in the world
Oh, yeah.
does that happen?
That's not even
And
like
these
your
have been,
average.
and these have been proven facts. So
Correct.
we're not. These are not alleged.
He agreed.
This
He
is,
said he
he would
did
say
all this.
yes.
Yes.
This is what. Yeah. So we're
Yes.
not saying anything that he hasn't said
Yes.
at this point. Yeah.
I also think like you could, not you specifically, one
Yeah.
could maybe be talked into smoking pot. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somebody can be like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
I tried it one mistake. Meth, it was like, whoa, I was shocked.
Again, can I say this?
Huh.
It goes to the pressure.
Yeah.
And this is a recurring theme that I want to talk about with all these churches. Celebrity churches, massive mega churches. There is an enormous amount of pressure. I'm going to say outsized pressure that may not even be healthy
Yeah.
for anyone.
for anybody to live under that level.
And so then it goes to what do we talk about in terms of mega church and what can one individual handle? What kind of pressure can they handle? But let's keep going with Ted.
Okay.
So here's Ted, and he's experiencing this enormous pressure.
Yes.
He's head of the National Association of Evangelicals. He's leading a massive movement across the globe with reaching the 1040 window. His church is exploding.
Yep.
He's preaching, 30, 40 sometimes a year in his church, having to come up with dynamic messages. There's so much pressure.
So
Again, no excuse for anything, but
Right.
I'm trying to bring the human side of things because I want to make sure people understand that.
He leaves in 2000. So this happens in 2006. He
Okay.
leaves with his whole family in 2007
Okay.
for a spiritual restoration program.
Right,
In
okay.
Phoenix, where he says he was healed of same-sex tendencies.
Okay, right. So
Okay.
he said he was healed.
Yep.
But let's pause for a second because I
Okay.
want to talk about the blow up in that church.
Oh, sure.
The blow up of that church was massive as well. Let me tell you, I was reliving what we had
Ooh,
already
you were
lived.
feeling that trauma
I was
again.
triggered
Yeah.
with that trauma that they were going through, even though I had no buy-in, so to say. I mean, there was no major connection there, but I was reliving what they were going, and I was like, you couldn't pay me $1 million to be where those pastors were to walk through that. No amount of money would have gotten me to
Have to maneuver
walk,
that
to go
whole
through the
thing.
wilderness of what they would have. And my thought was, is this church going to survive?
Yeah.
Much like our church. Like, are you going to survive this?
And what will the
Because
fallout
the
be?
trust and the brokenness and the fallout and the cancel and the hurt and all of that. And then, so he leaves, and maybe you're going to get to this, and he leaves, and then something happens a couple years later.
Yes,
What-
correct. In 2019.
Yeah, was it
right?
2019?
That's what it said online. Same issues with drugs. 2 younger men, one under the age of 18.
Yeah.
And
Did he confess to that as well in 2019?
I'm unsure.
I don't think he did. I don't think he did,
That
but there
under-
was strong evidence. But
strong
I don't
evidence.
think that
they
he
had recordings.
Yeah,
They had a
yeah.
briefcase full of
Yeah.
meth. And
Well, meth is one of those. I mean, not that I know, but I mean, from what I've seen on TV and like all that, like it's highly addictive,
the most.
and it is like
Yes.
once you're hooked on it, like it is.
It seems almost impossible.
Incredibly
It's
difficult.
so hard.
right?
It's so hard to watch. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness. So I want to say that I also have heard Ted Haggard speak
Oh.
Because in 2009,
Okay.
back in my Oral Roberts University days,
2009. He came?
he came to his friend's church, Ed Gunger's church, which was called Sanctuary.
That's a whole nother conversation.
know.
Oh my.
I wasn't even gonna touch
You're
that
going
one.
to trigger me on that too. I haven't heard that name in a while. Man, I'm going to get triggered.
I know. Get ready.
Okay, go ahead.
I was not a Sanctuary member, but
Okay.
I heard that he was coming. Ted Haggard was coming, and he was going to preach a sermon on a Sunday
Okay.
at Ed Gunger's
This
church.
is
2009,
after the first. And if you don't know, Ed Gunger was a musician. I think was he and his wife maybe. I don't know. We can fact check that. But they were coming to quite some popularity.
So he has Ted come, and they do almost like a Q&A. So he doesn't relinquish
you
the
were
pulpit.
In this.
I was probably 9 seats back from Ted Haggard.
Wow.
Watching the whole thing.
This is so
I know,
interesting.
juicy details.
Okay, so what?
My takeaway was I was shocked, floored by the lack of remorse that he had.
No way. Really?
Of just like, let's just shut that door. I made a mistake. We all make mistakes, but I should still be a pastor. That was the overall.
I think this is why you had that, making the call back to last episode. That might be why you're feeling the way that you feel. If someone is not remorseful,
yes,
like that's a big deal.
And I was there with quite a few other ORU friends. All of us having very different theologies, very different vibes. We all left with the same feeling of like, he doesn't seem like he was really sorry. He didn't seem like he.
Let me put the other side. I'm gonna take the other side.
Okay. Let's hear it. Devil's advocate.
Do you think that he? Because I think that Ernie kind of went through this as well. Do you think that Ted Haggard, do you think that Ted felt like, I have apologized ad infinitum? I've been apologizing for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
People, what else can I say? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I totally hear that.
Okay.
I think that was definitely in his mind.
Okay.
However.
Okay.
You go. Are you not doing this as part of an apology tour? If he's trying to get a pulpit. He wants to do another church, and he says that in this.
Oh,
thing.
he does.
Yes.
Okay.
He thinks he should still be able to be a pastor. So.
Okay.
Don't you think maybe your apology tour should be like pretty grandiose if that's your end game?
No, it's
just like strategically.
It's a great point. In other words, you're not wanting to say, "Hey, that was just a little mistake I made."
Yes.
Like, "Hey, that was so bad. I never want to go back there, but I still feel called to do X, Y, Z."
Yes.
You did not get that feeling at all. It was like that was a little blip, and let's move on.
Like, okay, we all make mistakes. We're all sinners.
Right.
But I'm called to do this, and I'm going to do another church.
Wow.
Spoiler alert, he does do another church.
He does.
Yes.
St. James. I
Yes.
kept track of him.
Oh, you did?
I did. Through the years.
Yes.
Like, I haven't looked at, I looked at him a couple years ago.
Oh, you
I'll
did?
see what you find
Okay.
out. But St. James, which was supposed to be a new type of church.
It opens in 2010.
Okay, 2010,
Go ahead.
where they were going to reach the lonely, the lost, the outcast.
Mm-hmm.
This is his vibe, which in a sense, it kind of felt like, okay, I get this. He's not trying to get the megachurch thing. He's just trying to meet the people of kind of reaching the people that have experienced some of the same things he's experienced.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Does that sound legitimate?
I hear it. I hear that he wants to do that.
My naivete says, yes, I was rooting for him.
That makes one of us.
I always want to believe the best, Orah.
I know.
I do. I really was
know.
rooting for him because I was like, this seems good. Like, he needs to be in a place where he's ministering to people that are like on the outcast that have been broken and hurt like him.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of need there.
Yes.
Okay.
And keep in mind, I've heard him a year tops, maybe 6 months prior to him opening up this church. I just saw him. I saw him in 2009. He opens up this church in 2010.
Right. Okay. Got
Okay.
it. Okay. So he opens up the church in 2010.
Yes.
What else did you find out?
So I did say, like we said before, that happened in 2019 where there was a secondary issue.
Yes.
There was also a meth issue in 2012.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
In 2012.
Yes.
Ah,
So it's a,
sad.
you know,
that he
recurring.
has admitted to as well, or that's just the rumor? Because I always want to know, right? I want to
This is
know.
allegedly, there's
Okay.
been other people on the staff that came out who said yes.
From
we
the
found
new
it.
church.
From the new church.
Okay, that said that.
Yes.
Which, again, allegedly, but
Allegedly.
I'm more
Yes.
apt to believe that just because of how powerful meth is.
Yes.
Okay, I get
Yes.
that. But we don't know, but probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was also, this is kind of, a little bit of a side, but his wife he ends up staying with his wife.
Yes, correct.
And she writes a book
Yes.
called Why I Stayed.
Was a very popular, I think it was a New York Times bestseller, if I'm mistaken.
I mean,
did you read it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm. It's very
Orah,
interesting.
I'm going to put that on your
Not
read.
going to do it.
You should read that, Orah. Wow.
I have feelings about making money off of that scandal.
Oh, interesting.
You know, capitalizing on that.
This is a whole other segment
You
that
know?
is challenging for pastors.
Yeah.
That lose a pulpit, lose a church. Again, he was wrong. It was wicked. It was sinful. He's paying the consequences. How then does one go about making money and
Yes.
and providing for a family as a result of that? That's
a good question.
because he was not a young man. It wasn't like he's like a Carl Lentz who's in his
Yes.
30s.
Yep.
Like he's in his late 50s, maybe even his early 60s. I
Yeah.
can't remember how old he is, but yeah.
But I
so
would
what do
say
you do?
you just get a job like a regular person.
His mistake, his failure, his sin, his wickedness, his consequence. I get that.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
But I hear in and out's hiring. You know what I mean? You could work anywhere. Wow. People everywhere in the world have to get a job.
Wow.
You know?
Okay. I'm listening to this. Okay.
I'm just saying.
Go get a job.
Not everybody's living their dream job life. They just get a job because they have to get a job. And he could do the same.
Okay.
You know?
So let's continue.
Okay.
So what happens? So he's got St. James Church.
Yes. Controversy with that was being the 2019 thing.
Yeah.
It gets smaller and smaller, and he turns it
course.
into like a home church network.
That's the last that I had heard.
Yeah.
And I actually went on Facebook because he was on Facebook doing
Wait,
sermons.
were you friends with him on Facebook?
No, I was not
okay,
friends with him on
okay.
Facebook. But I was looking up St. James Church.
Okay,
and it
yeah.
was not online anymore. Not their website.
I see.
Somehow was not there or whatever.
Yes.
And I think people had pretty much abandoned him after the second and third whatever happened,
Yes.
right? Mm-hmm. And then I went, because I was kind of rooting for him. I'm like, man, I
This
want
guy, he's up for all the chances.
I want to root for people.
That's great.
And then I saw him on a Facebook. It wasn't a live, but it was the recording of a live that he was doing. And he was just doing little devos.
Okay.
And it was just sad.
Did it make you sad?
Yeah, it did.
I
It made
can
me
see
really
that.
sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Good
just
call.
like, yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, time to hang it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you.
It's like the athlete that doesn't know when the time
Yes,
has
that
happened.
is such a great
you know,
analogy.
Go out on the high.
Yeah.
You know?
It breaks my heart. Like all these pastors, again, I go back to like it's the human factor. And again, I'm not discounting their sin. I want to be really clear with that. Like I'm a big believer, like, hey, there are consequences to the sins that we do. But I also, I got to think that God still loves us in the midst of our messes.
For sure.
And there are consequences with this. And it's so easy for us just to point the finger.
Yes.
And I do want to hold people accountable. 100% we need to do that. But man, it grieves my heart.
Yeah. It's a big...
Because not only what they're going through, what people have, the pain that people go through. Think about that church.
I know.
And what they had to go through.
I know.
And it's not their fault. And he screwed up.
Potentially those underage boys from now on for the rest of their lives.
Just ruined.
Yes.
And then he puts a black eye on the name of Christ all over the U.S.
I know.
Like, ouch.
Bad
That's
example.
not good.
Bad example.
So now I'm ready to, again, the finger's pointing back at me too, but man, it's not good.
Yeah.
Not good. Wrong, wicked, evil,
Yes.
needs to be held accountable, yes.
Yeah.
Should be carted off the stage,
Yeah.
so to speak.
What do you think that all of these like preachers of mega churches, we could say, and they
Yeah.
don't even necessarily have to have a mega church, but what do you think these type of people, what qualities do you see in them?
Yeah, okay. I want to say something that might shock you.
Okay. I'm prepared to be shocked.
All of these pastors would say that they're humble.
Yep. They would.
They would. And it's a false humility. And it's the most insidious thing I've seen as a pastor in my 30-some years of ministry, is the thought that one is humble and presents an air of humility, but in reality is amazingly filled with pride.
Yeah. How can you not have an ego? Honestly, legitimately. If people around me were like,
You're the best.
I mean, I would have an ego.
There is, I'll say this, like we're in a small church, right? I mean, we had 10% left of what we had before, right? And so I even experience this, very rarely, but I do experience it where I get the vibe from some people like, oh, like
ooh,
you're
the
awesome.
pastor.
Like
Yeah,
to me, like you're awesome. And I have to fight that.
Yeah.
Legit.
I mean, does it make you, like, it just naturally want to be around them more? You're like, ooh, they kind of feed something.
Well, no, it terrifies me.
It does,
No,
okay.
legit. And again, I try to say this with like real humility, like it terrifies me because I saw what happened and I don't want that.
Yeah.
But there's something internal that goes, oh, that feels good.
It has to.
I'm raising my hand.
It's like grabbing a sin nature that you
feels
want, you know?
good.
Totally.
Someone loves what you said. They want to be around you. They
natural.
think you're awesome.
Yes.
And it is so insidious.
Yeah.
I love that word. I mean, I hate it, but I love it, right?
Yeah.
And I think all those pastors would have said, no, I'm a humble pastor. Look at all the power that I really have, but I'm only doing this. And it's so wrong. There's so much manipulation. There's so much heartache.
Yeah.
They think they can get away with things that other people can't get away with.
Yeah.
And it's okay, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
I hear
venting
it.
now,
I
but
hear
that,
it.
okay, so that would be one thing.
Yes.
A false sense of humility.
Yeah.
Another thing that I think that they, what are we calling them? We're telling them, what are we calling them?
I'm calling them celebrity preachers,
Celebrity
but I
preachers.
don't
I was going
know.
to call them telepreachers. It's celebrity preachers. I'm going to say another thing that they have is there is that it factor. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to quantify.
Yes.
How do you quantify an it factor?
I know.
And there's
Some people
levels
just have
of
it.
it factor too,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
And it seems like the more it factor you have, the bigger the church you bigger the church you have. And then it kind of goes to, is it a spiritual thing or is it just because you've got this personality?
Yeah.
And how much of it is the anointing and how much of it is your own charismatic personality?
But then also, like, when you have maybe a worship leader who's not as good, don't you think, like, oh, no, I think God would choose a worship leader who has a really strong talent point. Like, if you're called to be a worship leader, don't you think God's going to, do something he's already given a natural talent to?
Yeah,
so similarly, a preacher could have a really natural talent for ordaining.
Maybe, although, can I tell you this? I've seen a lot of talented musicians who are horrible worship leaders.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
I mean,
it's another skill set.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a different. And I think
Yeah.
it's the same with like the preacher thing. There's some great orators that are not that don't have mega churches.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's again that it factor that people want to be around, and that's what terrifies me too. When people are congregating around a person instead of the message of the gospel.
Well, because even in a regular social environment, you know somebody who is magnetic, who you're just like, gosh, there's just something about them. They just, I love talking to them.
Yeah.
I love,
Yeah, but you don't form your whole life around that person.
Accurate. So
right?
true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another factor. So I think there's this false humility. I think there's this it factor. And I think to some degree, there is this, I'm going to call it organizational genius that some of these guys have. Ernie had it. I think to Brian Houston had it. Ted Haggard had it. Like these guys, it's like they're mixing the business with the spiritual.
They're good business people.
They really are. And there's nothing wrong with that. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
In some sense, there is a business side of church. I mean, you're dealing with money. You're dealing with people. You're dealing with employees. That's a business side. Obviously, the spiritual should outweigh that. But these guys are really great with that. Yeah. And that has a factor on these churches.
Yeah, and I think also, as we talked about them being emotive, that's attracting to people.
Yes. Can they be vulnerable?
Yes.
Can they share their heart? But only so much.
I know.
And this again,
as I want them
this
to.
is also another thing that can be very
Subjective.
manipulative, right? Because I can share just enough that makes you think I'm being really vulnerable and transparent, but I've got this whole other life that I don't want to share.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me throw a question at you.
Yeah.
How vulnerable do you want your pastor to be? This has been a seminary question. How vulnerable should the pastor be in the pulpit?
I love a vulnerable pastor.
Okay. All right.
I think
what does
I
that
can
mean?
even think of things where you've preached that are so memorable to me because you were vulnerable. When you talked about like you really went into depth about your twins and like maybe your wife in labor and you got emotional there.
Yeah.
So memorable.
Okay.
Like you're just oh, I remember that. I remember that sermon. Great.
Right, okay.
There's times where you're like that brought something extra.
It was a whole nother level.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. But what about being vulnerable like with your sin issue as a pastor? Does that make sense?
Like as far as like this is what I've struggled with in life?
Yeah, what I struggled with or maybe what I'm currently struggling with. Do you want to know that from your pastor?
Yeah, I like it.
You like it?
I do.
You're like, okay, it's all right.
I like it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do expect them to have a hold on their struggles in some sense of just, you know what I mean?
Right, exactly. You don't.
So I'm saying yes, but like not in the sense of like, yeah, but then I went and did
I
meth
saw
this
you.
weekend.
Yeah, if you're not watching this and you're looking, Orah's thinking as she's talking, like,
I'm like,
maybe
but
I
not like
don't
you're
know about how
living.
much I want him to be.
I want them to, like, nobody likes to feel like their pastor's like a Mattel Barbie or something. You know, like you don't want it, you want a realness to occur.
You don't
there.
want plastic
Yes.
evangelical.
Yes.
With a plastic smile that says it's all
Yes,
good.
everything's great.
And I'm great.
Yes.
Right.
I like truth and I like vulnerability.
Yeah.
I'm
that's
into
good.
it.
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I feel sometimes, I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable.
Okay.
Right now.
We set the stage.
I know we set the stage. I sometimes feel like when I get up to preach, like I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to say it. Not going to say it. Sometimes, well, I should say
Wait,
it. Now
you're
that
not
I said
saying it?
I know.
Wait.
I said it now, and they're not going to cut the segment out.
We don't
I'm
make
going to
cuts.
have
There's
to
no
say it
edits
now.
out
There's
here.
no edits, so it's just live. I'm going to say sometimes in the pulpit, like, I feel like the things that I struggle with, I think people are going to say, that's it?
Oh,
Does that make sense?
Yes,
like they want something
yes.
more, and
Uh-huh.
so I don't share some of the struggles that I have because I
Yes.
think they're going to think it's so petty.
It's like having a testimony, but you grew up Christian.
Right.
You're like, what can I even say? You know?
Yes, exactly. And I said some bad things to my parents once.
Now they're like, cool.
But then I got on my knees and I prayed, and Jesus saved me, right? I'm like legit because I grew up as a Christian kid, and then I
Yes.
don't want to seem like I'm just like so much better than. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
totally.
I don't have that
Totally.
testimony. It's so good, Orah.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
exactly how I feel.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't know what else to say to
I
that.
can see
but
that
I'm
being a
just
problem.
saying,
Thank
yeah,
you for
yeah,
sharing.
That's my
and
vulnerability.
I can see that also being like, I can see that.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, I don't
Yeah.
know, what do I need to say? I don't have any big struggles right now. I'm good. You know?
Yeah, and then it's like, well, come on, really? Come
I
on.
know.
You're not really being honest now.
I know.
And that's so hard.
It is really hard.
Anyway, okay. So back to why we're kind of
Yes.
saying all this.
Okay, so this is attracting. It's attracting to so many people.
Yeah.
When there's a controversy and there's a fall,
Yes.
that same attraction just drops and everything scatters.
1,000%. We
And-
saw it here. We see it with
Yes.
Hillsong. We saw it with
New Life.
New Life Church.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
And that's something that I think as just a, layman Christian like myself, that you have to wonder when you're church hunting or shopping or even listening to a podcast
Okay.
of what am I looking for? And, just being aware of that's historically been an issue in Christian churches. And
yeah, keep going because I'm trying to track with you here.
Kind of
Okay.
knowing, like, okay, if I'm going to go down this road, how do I make sure that I don't put them on a pedestal or I don't, they are really good. There is something about them.
Right. There
Do
is
I
an
want-
attractiveness to
Yeah.
it, right?
And just knowing for myself, like, do I want to go to that church because that guy's so cool?
Right.
And there's just something like
That's why you're coming to
dang,
Crosspointskc
you know-
Church. I mean, come on.
You heard it here
I
first.
mean, Keith Green and CCM music right here. I'm telling you. People have compared me to Carl Lentz. Let me- She's laughing at that. Hey, I got my
resemblance is
Hospital Hill
uncanny.
jacket here, man. But no, okay, so sorry,
You know what I'm
I
saying?
riff on that. No. Your point is like, okay, so here I'm a layperson,
Yes.
and I'm stepping into a church and I'm looking at churches,
Yes.
and I know all this stuff is going on there. How do I keep myself from making sure that I keep the main thing the main thing?
From falling into the trap. Because
Yes.
we love it. I went to a mega church in
Okay.
Tulsa. I loved it.
You loved it. Loved
Church
it. Loved
on the
it.
Move. Loved
okay,
it.
great.
Willie George was the pastor.
Right.
Their worship was the best. It was like
Okay.
a freaking concert every Sunday.
Like, how do they
It
do
was
that?
So good.
Thousands of people,
Yes.
right? Yes. Okay, great.
Packed.
Okay, packed.
So it's not to say that I'm
and you
attracted
feel
to
like
it.
you're a part of something.
Oh, my
You're
goodness.
part of a movement.
Yes.
It's not just me. It's like I'm collectively part of something
just
else.
to be surrounded by that many
Yes.
Christians.
And there's energy and the whole thing,
yes,
right?
It's
Yes.
something
Yes.
powerful. It's something cool.
Okay.
All
But-
that to say,
Okay.
that's not our church here.
No.
And I'm fine
Sorry,
with that.
I'm laughing because it's like, in some sense, every pastor wants to have the energy, the room
Totally.
filled. We want all this stuff. But okay, what are we really
What
doing?
matters?
What matters?
Yes.
And this is where I wanted to get with this podcast. All of that is backstory. It's
Yes.
context to why do we do church in the first place?
Yes.
Come on, let
Yes.
me preach for a second.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. Okay, it's not about, no, we know this intuitively. I'm going to say things that people already know.
Yeah.
It's not about the concert. It's not about the music. It's not about the celebrity preacher, the nature of how the preacher talks. It's not about the vibe in the room. It's not about the lights or the LED screen or the smog machines, the smoke machines, the
Yes.
lights, camera, action, the online stuff. All of that stuff is noise.
Yeah, which we have. We're not bashing another.
Thank
We
you.
have these
yes,
things at our
and I
church.
love those
Yes,
things.
yes.
I love them, but it's not the main thing.
Right.
It's not what drives us. It's the message that drives us. Jesus literally changes lives.
Yes. Yeah. It's about the biblical teaching.
Stop. I was like
That's
full
it, yes,
stop. I was
yeah.
just trying to go there. Like, here, this is my pet peeve. I'm taking the mic right now. If you can't, if you're not watching this, this is my pet peeve.
Okay.
Every ex-evangelical that I've heard, okay, has been hurt or wounded, either legitimately or not legitimately.
Okay.
And every time that I hear them, they're pointing the finger at someone else.
Okay.
And they've forgotten the message of the gospel. Let me make sure I break this down.
Yes.
They're upset with people.
Yeah.
And so as a result of those people that are leaders, they're throwing out the message of the very gospel that saved their life in the first place.
It's interwoven. They can't. They have a hard time.
So interwoven.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to say in all of this that we have got to keep our eyes on Christ.
Yeah.
Jesus is the one that changed my life. When I was struggling, and when my parents went through a divorce, and when I was going through the dark night of my soul, it was Jesus Christ that reached down and picked me up out of a miry pit. He saved me. Ernie Gruen did not save me.
Yeah.
Carl Lentz did not save
Yeah.
me, right? These people did. And I
Yeah.
understand it's all interwoven, but I just want to get back to the simplicity of the message
Yeah.
is that Jesus raises us from death to life.
Yeah.
This is the message of the gospel.
Yeah.
And we forget that in 21st century America. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going on just for a second. I know
Okay,
you're getting a little
I wanna say something.
hang on. But I'm going to say, listen, it's the power of the gospel that we forget because we're surrounded by the lights and the camera and the TV and the internet and the cables and all the stuff and the social media that we lose sight of the fact that Jesus wants a personal relationship with us. He wants to talk with us and walk with us and live with us and change us from the inside out.
I agree.
Okay, rant over. Go ahead.
I'm going to say, I hear you saying that a lot of people idolize their pastors, and it's idolatry, and that's really what's triggering you.
Woo!
That's what I hear you saying.
Yes.
Okay.
Orah, that's so good.
Yeah.
It's the
And I'm gonna say,
idolization of the
yes.
communicator.
I'm going to say that what happens as a layman is
Okay.
that you're in relationship with these people, with people at church,
Right.
with your pastor.
Right.
And it's really the relationship that you're so hurt from. And resolving that hurt from the relationship, it does take you away. It
Yeah.
does take something.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process, It's just like
You kind of popped my bubble there for a second, and just to be clear, because you're right. I mean, there is a very personal nature to it.
It is. You
It's
feel
very
there's a connection.
Yeah, so
And
you're
that's why
feeling
you're involved with the
personally-
church.
Yeah, Yeah.
You have a connection with the people, with the pastor, with whatever. And so it's that feeling of being like so disappointed and let
Betrayed.
down, betrayed.
Stabbed in the back.
Yes, that you have to work through those feelings and those emotions, and that's valid, and that could take time, and
You're
that
right. You're right. Hey, thank you for having therapy with me, because this is so helpful. No, it's really true. Because I'm more of those guys that are just like, suck it up and get over it.
Yeah.
I tend now. I don't say it that way, but that's how I feel.
It's your feeling.
It is.
Yeah.
It's my feeling. And I think you're absolutely right. There is a personal side that we have to emotionally kind of work through those issues.
Yeah, I mean, because you have to resolve that, and you have to work through your forgiveness and your your betrayal feelings.
Yeah,
you know?
because that takes time.
Yeah, totally.
100%.
And then it's really just extricating that from your Jesus relationship, from not melding all those together.
That's right.
And that everybody could work on. I totally agree.
Yeah. I guess what irritates me though is the people that then begin to deconstruct because they fell, it wasn't real. And so what I'm trying to say is that don't throw out the power of the gospel because somebody else fell.
For sure.
The reason why we came to Christ in the first place was because there's power in the name of Jesus, not power in the name of David or Ernie or Ted or whatever pastor, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's not our power.
For sure.
So I hear the emotional side of things, but I'm like, it doesn't give a pass. This is what I'm going to say. It does not give a pass to anybody to say, okay, I'm just going to jettison my faith. I mean, again, people have free will. They can do whatever they want. But I'm just saying from a pastoral
perspective,
perspective,
what you want for
don't
somebody.
use that as an excuse.
You want somebody to dig
I
deeper.
see that online all the time, and it irritates the living daylights out of me.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you've just excused the power of the gospel because of an individual, not because of what Jesus did. So then, yeah.
I want to say that I think also because it's a fight daily to have your relationship with God.
Right.
If you're not working on it, it dissipates. You're not working on it. So often our relationship with God could often be tied to just going to church. They're not reading the Bible, they're not whatever. They might not have an active spiritual life.
1000%.
So it's just, that's it. So once that
Once that cut happens, you're removed from that?
Yes.
What else is left?
Exactly.
You're going to wither. If you're like a tree or a root or whatever, that's been cut. So insightful.
So
Absolutely.
it's really if you're in this vibe of like, wow, I actually hear from God so much from David, from Karl. I can't believe how much more I hear from God. You feel
that's
that.
The only time that you hear, the only time that you crack open your Bible or whatever.
So
or pray or try to hear God's voice. Orah, that's so good. 100%.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to say to you, the listener, whoever or wherever you may be, is that your relationship with God absolutely is number one.
You have to cultivate that on your own. Church is necessary. It is biblical. I'm not saying that, but
for sure.
You do have to have a relationship with God outside of church.
You don't live on a mountain in a monastery, but you also don't just have church on Sunday morning. And that's it. That's the bulk of your spirituality. Yeah. And I'm just saying, like, in our culture today, like, just because of the spiritual, biblical illiteracy in the context in which we live, I'm afraid that is what people consider their spiritual walk. Right, totally. Is Sunday morning. Maybe a small group if you're really spiritual.
Yeah, no, I agree. Right. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about, like, from the leader side, like false humility. Yes. We've talked about the it factor, and then we've talked about kind of the being vulnerable but not really being vulnerable, and the pressure that these pastors, celebrity preachers have, and that the issue of I wanted to go back to this, like the issue of a mega church. Like, to me, man, I begin to wonder what is the limit at which an individual can lead an organization.
I've been wanting to ask you this.
How big can that church be?
I've been wanting to ask you this. At what point, like, do you have something even in your mind of like, our church cannot get bigger than this without being like, we need another church has to form. We got to do a different church.
Well, so as you know, we're huge into church planting. Right. I mean, like, I haven't said this. You have heard it here first, folks. I don't think I've even said this to myself. But I would love to get to a place where we're like 1,500 or 2,000.
That would be your goal. That would be your dream.
That would be a great. That would be a dream. If God wants to give us, again, it's not about numbers. It's about Him, right? It's all those things. But like, if God were to grace us to get to that point, that would be great.
To you, that feels like
that's manageable, and it's like we're impacting the community around. There's something about having a larger church that gives you the opportunity to have big impact. So I'm not about not having big churches. Yeah, I love big churches. I just wonder what the cap is, and I think that individuals have different caps. I'm going to have a cap that's different than a Ted Haggard or a Carl Lentz or whatever. I don't know what those caps are. Anyways, but going back to what I'm saying is, like, I would love to have that for our church. I think 1,500 to 2,000, and then just plant lots of churches. I would love to see
Because every time you plant a church, you're taking away from the thousands.
But God then gives more.
Yeah, true.
So we'll even plant before we get to the 1,500 or 2,000 mark, right? But that we have that in our DNA. That's what I think. And again, that might just be my limit. But I wonder what the limit is, like for someone like in a mega, like I think a global senior pastor of hundreds of thousands of people, I don't think that's right for anybody.
Yeah.
I just think it's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
And we see a person
know.
break as a result of that.
I know.
Or a Karl Marx whose church grows so fast. And we can talk about this, like a church that grows way too fast.
I know. It's just they're not ready for it.
They're not ready. There's so much
They
pressure.
don't have the systems in place.
They don't have the systems, the maturity, the foundation, all of those things.
Totally.
That's a problem.
Totally. And then you're just like getting people on staff who maybe aren't like to the moral values that you want.
Yeah.
But you're just like, we got to get people on staff. We got to go. We got to go.
Yeah,
you know?
And then it just becomes about all the people and the numbers.
I know. It ends up
and
being
then
really hard.
we're missing something.
It's so hard.
I wonder if 5,000 might be, like, again, I'm just throwing out a random number. Is that like 5 or 10, like 10? Just, that's huge.
It's so big.
It's huge.
I know.
So anyway,
I don't
that
know.
would be. I don't think that there's an answer, but I would wonder to keep pastors healthy, even if you're just a lead pastor that just preaches and just does vision. I wonder if 5 is about like. I don't know. I just
I've
wonder.
even heard people who go to mega churches that they don't tithe to the mega church because they're like, there's so many people there, they don't even need my. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's all these things.
Well,
that occur
I
at
can
a mega
say
church,
we
you
love
know?
your tithe and we need your tithe at Crosspoint
We're not
Church.
a mega church.
We're not
a mega
5,000.
church.
But no, I have heard that, right?
Yeah.
It's like they don't need it.
I know.
Yeah. But,
Okay, so one last question I want to ask
last
you.
question, good.
And
Here we
this
go.
is what we know what the celebrity pastors are bringing. They're bringing charisma, magnetic energy,
The
je ne sais
infector.
quoi.
Yeah, okay.
Emotive speakers. What are you bringing?
That's interesting. Okay, what am I bringing
What
to
do you
Crosspoint
bring
Church?
as a preacher, as a head pastor? What is your skill set?
Okay, I think one of the gifts that God has given me is a vision for the future that we hadn't had since Ernie.
Okay.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting that answer, but I like
right?
it. But
Okay.
I like it.
So the vision that I have is that one, we are a church that is deeply committed to the Great Commission. Okay?
Yeah.
And we are going to continue which I think our previous pastors would say that they had that. I believe that God's got a calling on this church for church planting.
Okay.
And I'm leading the charge in saying we're going to be a church that plants churches.
Okay.
It drives my staff crazy sometimes, but this is who we're called to be because we're all about the big C church. That's
Okay.
really important. Okay. And then I think I think I would be remiss if I didn't say there's some degree, now I'm not like a Karl Marx by any means or a Ted Haggard, or I would even say even an Ernie Gruen, but I think I bring a certain level of communication, of opening up scripture on a Sunday morning. I bring that. I don't know how much of an it factor I have, but I think I do bring the ability to open up God's word on a Sunday morning.
Biblical teaching.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Those are great.
would say those things.
Those are great. I agree.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I agree with that.
Yeah, there you go.
What if I
Right?
said no?
Yeah, then I would have to be humble and listen. But I try to have an honest assessment of myself, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what real humility is.
I
It's
also
not
think
discounting
you're
what you. Yeah.
naturally an encourager. That's something about you. You're a
that's good.
natural
I would agree
encourager,
with
and
that.
I think that's a big thing to bring to the
Thank you.
table. Yeah.
That's good. Okay.
And as we've seen, he likes to give people a million chances, which is
Yes.
also good.
I believe the best. Come on, Ted. Carl, I'm glad you're where you're at.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. All right. So, what do we got now?
So let's move on to our final segment.
Yes.
Unnecessary opinions.
Unnecessary opinions or congregational, what did you say? Concerns.
Concerns,
Yeah.
yes.
I don't know if they're concerns or not. Okay.
They're really
what do
not.
we got for today?
Okay.
Okay, folks, here we go.
OMG, how do we feel about saying God's name in vain? Is it a big deal? Is it not that big of a deal? Do you ever say, oh my God?
No.
You never say it.
No.
Do you say, oh my gosh?
Yes.
Were you ever chastised to be like, that's just like saying, oh my God? It's just a Christian.
I never even said it, not because my parents wanted me to, because I never wanted to.
Really?
Seriously.
Wow, look at this conviction you
I
have.
feel pretty strongly about this.
You do?
I do. I think that it is one of the 10 commandments. Don't take the Lord's name in vain.
What do you
like
think
God's
that,
name is like important,
Yes.
and we discount that in our society. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, but
I'm off my high horse now.
but God has a lot of names, okay? And our God's name, we could say Yahweh. So you could say, you don't want to say, oh my Yahweh. But God, you use that for a lot of terms. People use it all the time. Lower G God. What if it's, oh my God, lower G?
I don't
You
know.
know?
I guess you have to say that in your own heart and your own spirit.
No, I know.
Who am I to condemn?
I know.
don't know.
I'm
But
gonna
I
say-
just think, like, when you, like, if you're saying that,
Mm-hmm.
why are you saying that? Is it just a cultural phrase? Is
Yes,
it
it's a
meaningless?
colloquialism?
A colloquialism?
Yeah,
Is it
okay.
meaningless to you? But I don't know.
Yeah, and should it be meaningless? And if it is,
How does it affect other people? when you say that.
It doesn't.
Not at all. Just
No.
completely off the tip of their head.
No. Do you think it affects other people when you say that?
I'll say this too. This is another pet peeve I have of mine is that there's a lot of Christians that don't even think or care about like cursing anymore.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I got a big problem with that.
Oh, David?
Because it's scriptural. We're
Okay.
supposed to have clean mouths, clean
Yeah.
hands. I could give. We'll put in the show notes the scriptures on cussing. I had my son about a year ago say, "Where in the Bible does it talk about cussing?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh!" I pulled up like 3 or 4 verses
Listen,
and sent it
David,
to him
the
his
Bible
way.
talks about a lot of things. I'm going to say that first of all. The Bible talks about a lot of
Yeah,
things.
Old Testament and New Testament.
know,
When we
I
get
hear you.
Old Testament and New Testament, I think there's some pattern there.
Okay.
Okay.
Listen.
Don't say, "Oh my God."
I'm going to tell you. I cuss. I'm a cusser.
Okay.
I'm a cusser.
You have to control your mouth. I'm just saying.
Listen, I don't disagree.
Okay.
But I also think
I'm
that
not judging
sometimes
you.
Christians are too intense about things that just don't need to be that intense.
Okay.
You know?
Is that what you think?
That's what I think.
You just have an open hands?
That's what I think.
Okay.
Open hands.
That's good. Okay.
I mean,
I have a generous
am I a
theology.
cusser like the
I think you're wrong.
stereotypical like construction worker? No. But I
Okay.
just don't want to portray myself as something I'm not. I
Right.
do
You want to
use
be
curse
honest
words.
with her, with where you are.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Well, I think what we say matters.
I agree.
I agree, right?
I totally
Okay,
agree.
Hey, and I'm not trying to say that you have to be perfect. I'm not perfect, right?
I am. But
Yes. We all know that. This is why you're leading this podcast.
No, really. No,
It's very interesting conversation, though.
I know.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
This is a deeper question.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
No.
I don't think you are. Do you want to try to stop cussing? Or is it you're just like, I don't care, it's not a big deal? Does that
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll let you think about it for a second.
I'm going to answer. I'm ready.
Okay.
I'm
no
not-
pressure on my part.
Okay. First of all, I am who I am.
Yes. Hey, and there's no judge. The
1
people are
Corinthians
not.
15:10.
They're not judging you.
I know.
Okay.
By the grace of God, I am what I am.
Right, I am
His
what
grace
I
to me
am.
is not without effect.
I love that.
It's my favorite verse in the Bible. I don't care about cursing. I don't need to stop. I don't mind it. I don't care about it. It doesn't bother me.
Wow. Okay.
I know.
What if I started cussing?
I could be burning
in our
bridges right
conversation.
now, but
What if I started?
am who I am.
What if I started cussing in our conversations? What would you think about that?
I would think he's down to earth. He's.
You would not. You're lying right through your teeth. You already said you hold pastors on a whole nother level.
I know.
I don't believe
But
you.
honestly, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me.
I'm gonna start cussing in the pulpit. What do you think about that?
But I also
if I
would
start
love-
cursing in the pulpit, what do you think about
I would
that?
love to know what you think of as a curse word, because to you, I'm almost thinking you're thinking like crap. Or like,
I don't think crap is a cuss
Yeah.
word. Now we're gonna have to get to the minutia. These are
I know.
congregational concerns, folks. I think we've hit our mark at that point.
Guys,
love
thanks
it.
for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Put in the comment what you think.
Yes.
Don't tell us what your
Listen,
cuss words are.
don't tell us.
what you think others are that are not.
But tell the truth. I
Yeah,
can't be the
come on.
only truth
Oh,
teller here.
I'm sure. It's so
I cannot
true.
be the only person
I agree.
in the
I'm sure.
congregation
It's true. That feels your way.
who feels like it's
The wrong
fine.
way, yeah.
Listen.
Okay.
People drink now.
Yeah, I know.
That's
hey,
in the Bible.
That's a whole
I mean,
other
I'm just
conversation. We
saying.
can have that.
Cursing.
There's no cursing in the Bible. There's drinking in the Bible. There's
I
no
know.
cursing. We're gonna keep this going here, Brazil. If you want to push the pastor, do you want me to be known as the cussing pastor? Did you know that
Yes.
there was a guy that was named as the cussing pastor?
I
Did you
didn't
not know that?
No, I didn't
Yeah,
know
Mark
that.
Driscoll. He was another
really?
another controversial pastor that we'll
Really?
have to talk about at some point. Yeah.
I love the power that you can bring with a curse word. When you really just occasionally just bring one out, and then you're just like, whoa, they're
Is
mad.
she using the demonic for
You
some
know?
power? Is
It
that
just,
what
like,
we would
really
have said in the 80s?
It like really sets the vibe of like, hey, she's feeling a certain way, you know?
Wow.
Don't you get that?
Folks, can you pray for me,
The
please?
power of your words. He's saying the power of your words, and I'm like, yeah, they're powerful. Yeah, they're great.
They
You should
are
try them
powerful.
sometime.
Wow. Wow. Okay, folks.
Guys, thanks for watching.
Don't forget, podcast at crosspointschurch.com if you want to leave some comments.
Yep, leave some comments. Don't forget to subscribe.
Yes.
Share with your friends.
Okay.
Opposites podcast here. That's what you're here for.
That's what we're here for. Adios.